Hi Sagittarius, this is Lee at Fresh Astrology, and we are looking at the final quarter of 2018. I'm doing quarterly readings right now because my schedule is quite full. As some of you know, I have a coaching business and I run a business for events and retreats around coaching. So this is harder and harder to fit in, and I want to find a way to still do this, so my compromise is to do quarterly. That being said, let's look at your chart. So we're already in the middle of October, kind of moving past the middle, and there's a definite marker of the energy here in October into November. And for those of you who haven't watched me before, I do look at life in terms of energetic influence, and so I would ask the question, how do you think the planets influence you? It's through the way energy is transferred. We are all made up of energy. Everything around us is energetic. So when I talk about the energy, it's the specific quality of what makes Venus, Venus, for example, or Uranus, Uranus, for example. They're made up of specific gases and solids. They have different temperatures. All of that is energetic, and they have different weights and size. All of that contributes to the energetic feel, if you will, which sounds a little esoteric, but it is actually the way it is. And we ourselves are made up of energetic elements. So all the atoms, all the little bits, the tiniest bits that make up our skin and our brains. We actually have a bit of an electrical energy running through us. All of this is energy. And so when I speak of the energy, it's really, how does Venus meet with us and create change? There's some kind of energetic exchange going on there. So I realize not everybody speaks my language. So that's what I mean by energy. It's the way one thing impacts another. It's how the transfer occurs. It's one way to look at it. It's more complex than that, but I just wanted to try to simplify and explain what I mean by energy, because somebody seemed very confused. And when you hear somebody speaking a different language, it's hard to make sense of what they're saying. So I also will focus a great deal on how we feel, because how we feel has a definite energy. Have you ever walked into a room where somebody's really angry or really sad and depressed? You immediately feel what they're feeling, or to some degree you get clues because of the energy exchange. You pick up some body language and stuff, but there's even beyond that. Even if you don't yet see the person, you can walk into a room if somebody's really angry and you can tell something's going on. Everybody's had this experience, almost everybody. If you haven't, that's really interesting. So anyway, Sagittarius, let's look at your chart. We have Uranus retrograde opposing Venus retrograde. And so when planets are opposing, they basically slice in half your chart. And they have this, what's like an axis, a line that goes from one part of the chart to the other and cuts it in half. And both these planets are on the cusp of a sign, which means they're kind of straddling two signs. They're also essentially straddling two different houses. Houses on a chart are like two different areas of life. So there's a lot going on here. It's complex. It's hard to even reduce this and simplify because there's so many things going on. And then the planets themselves have all this meaning, these energy, these qualities. So how do we make sense of all that? I would say, like this, when I look at all this and try to reduce it down to something understandable that we can talk about in an okay amount of time, what it looks like to me is that the average Sagittarius is dealing with issues of health and mental health within themselves and around them. So the average Sagittarius is going to have people around them who are getting sick, going to the hospital, maybe possibly in their world somewhere. So it doesn't mean, like, don't get alarmed when I say this, but you know, there could be some death and dying out there. It's a part of life. We definitely, even on the news, we're exposed to there's been so much catastrophe. You know, we've had hurricanes, we've had tsunamis. I mean, you know, we're exposed to all of that, and it depends, you know, on varying degrees, you know, if you're directly involved in something like that, or directly involved in like somebody within your social circle dying, or if it's just mortality is on your mind, your own health and mortality, and the health and mortality of others. Because at the heart of every health ailment that you or somebody else has is this teeny little fear, whether it's conscious or subconscious or completely unconscious. When we think about a health problem, a lot of us, somewhere inside of us, are going all the way to the end conclusion. You know, what if this is worse, or what if I don't, you know, this is something that can't be treated. You know, the ultimate conclusion is I might die from it, or somebody I know and care about might die from it. And so there's a lot of that on your mind over the past year, and especially now. And with Venus involved, which is a personal planet, I suspect somebody close to you has been in the hospital, or their mental illness or health is deteriorating. And there may be a few of you who've had, like I said, a death in your peripheral world somewhere. So that's the reality of this particular energy. Uranus brings in the unexpected. So it's like going back and forth across this line about health, and it's always an indication of your own health and the health of others. So I wouldn't exclude, so when I talk to you about your health here and your mental health, the way to deal with it is to notice what's been going on in your health. Like, do you have some symptoms that you haven't gotten treatment for? I'm not saying they're bad. This is not a prediction that something bad will happen. I'm just saying that when you have Uranus like skirting around on this cusp here, implicating the 6th house, there's also an implication of children or parents. It's more family and close friends oriented, that something's rattling your world. And it's not necessarily the same thing over and over. It's just, it may seem to some of you like, when is this going to end? You know, first this happens to my daughter, then this happens to my son, then this happens to my mother, and then my friend just had this thing happen in their health or mental health. You know, what is going on? Well, it's Uranus here on the cusp of your 6th house. And it can rattle your own health and mental well-being. And I suspect over the next 7 years, you're getting an indication now of something that the universe, for some reason, the wisdom of God, the universe, nature, is wanting you to do right now, is to learn how to deal with what life throws at you in this arena. So life can throw weird health curves. Your schedule can change on a dime. Managing your schedule is something you're meant to be learning how to do in a way that serves your health and mental health. So schedule management. And maybe helping someone else manage their schedule. And in the beginning, it feels very hard. And that's what's happening right now. You're at the very, very beginning of this transit. And if you have children, they're a part of how hard it is to manage something. If you don't have children, it's really just your own schedule and doing things in a way on a daily basis that support your overall well-being. And at the very beginning of these transits, it tends to be trickier and worse. So if you felt lately like, I just can't seem to feel better, or I just, if you're suffering from depression or anxiety and you're like, I can't seem to get on top of it. I've gone to the doctor, I'm taking medication, I know I shouldn't let things bother me, or but I just can't seem to, so much is getting thrown at me, it's hard to keep an equilibrium going. And I would just say that life in general, there's really no such thing as equilibrium, although I can agree that there have been times in my life where I've felt a relative degree of equilibrium. Relative is the key word there. I have had smoother times in my life and rougher, more chaotic times. Right now for you, and I've been through this transit with Uranus here, so I understand what it feels like. It's not exactly the same for everybody, but it's just learning right now that there is no such thing as equilibrium in your schedule and in people's health and what life throws at you. It's learning to juggle. It doesn't mean, now that doesn't mean that you're supposed to have no boundaries and agree to do everything everybody asks you to do, and to never say no to a party invitation or some other commitment. In fact, this is a time when you might want to establish better boundaries with your schedule. And that's in service of creating a life that feels really good for you, while you also get things done, because the 6th house is also all about how you move your work life forward in your career, or it's really your day-to-day job. And so there's something very important is happening here in your day-to-day work. So you probably know what that is. Some of you may be embarking on a new career or a new career idea. But whatever you're doing right now is going to be very important to your future work life. So you're building kind of by, this is an interesting concept, so see if you can follow me. It doesn't make total sense because it's not usually the way we think. But you're building, now with Pluto and Saturn, for example, you build by solidifying things and building something that's going to be more or less permanent. Uranus does a reductionist kind of take, and Pluto and Saturn can do it too. There's first the reductionist, like get rid of all this stuff, get rid of all this stuff, get rid of these belief systems you have. If your religious beliefs are hurting you, you might want to work with those. If there are people in your life who are like really creating chaos, then you need to address that. It doesn't mean get rid of them. I think things can be gotten rid of, but people you don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater. Although sometimes you do need to create a little distance if somebody's really messing with your nerves. But then the question becomes, why? Why is someone messing with your nerves? Because really, like in the coaching world and even in other forms of counseling, the emphasis should be more about, and you may need space so you can figure it out, but what creates anxiety for you? What belief systems do you have? What thoughts do you have in your mind that don't serve you anymore? So I would say, as a coach especially, that part of the reductionist phase of Uranus here in your health, wellness, well-being, and the way you're building your daily schedule is getting a handle on your own belief system, because your beliefs and thoughts create your emotional world. They create those nerves, that last nerve somebody steps on. It really comes not from what they do to you, but how you internalize, how you make sense of it. And if you feel like, I just can't deal with so-and-so anymore, it's more what you're making their behavior mean. What does their behavior mean to you? and why are you internalizing it in any particular way. And that's not something you can do. You can't just snap your fingers and change a belief system that's been very entrenched in there, and maybe you came about your belief system, maybe it developed through as a coping mechanism in the past, but I would argue it's not serving you now, because with Uranus you're meant to clear away schedule blocks, like things that are really getting in the way in your schedule. You're meant to clear away negative beliefs. You're meant to clear away symptoms and causes of symptoms. So it's really getting to root cause, and in a mental health arena, root cause often goes back to, for some people it's a biological thing, but mental disturbance and reactions, somebody getting on your last nerve or getting sad or feeling a certain way, they always kind of boil down to an underlying belief system. And the stuff that you tell yourself, the stories you tell yourself about whatever's happening. And in your physical health, it's not just treating symptoms or ignoring symptoms, but getting down to root cause and then eliminating that root cause if you can. So that is the overarching meaning for all Sagittarius. But at the same time, there are going to be people, like, we can control what we do. We can't control what somebody else is doing, and that may be one thing to accept right now. For example, if you have a parent who has dementia or something like that, first of all, you can't control your parents or anybody else other than very young children, and even then you can't really control everything about them, including their health. We have the illusion that we can control younger children, but really and truly we don't have total control over that. But certainly our parents, our friends, our spouses, we do not have control over them. And so it's understanding how to cope within yourself about what's going on with them. So if you have a parent with dementia, for example, there's only so much you can do unless you take some kind of extreme form of control where you have them declared incompetent. That's very extreme. Most people aren't going to go to that extreme unless they feel like the person is a danger to themselves and others in an extreme way that a judge would agree with. So most of the time when we're in this situation with aging parents, you just don't have the ability to do much more than put your 2 cents worth in sometimes. And usually what you find is it's not taken. It's not accepted. They give you back your money. So whether it's dementia or a health problem they have or a way of taking care of themselves and they're in their right mind, often what you'll find with an elderly person is they're like, thanks, but no thanks. Thanks for sharing, but I'm not listening. And that's true to a degree with friends and spouses and even children once they're older. They may or may not listen to you. And so there's something about that here for you. But keep in mind that we want to keep an eye on your own health and mental health, the way you're taking in things, how you can reduce stress, how you can manage your schedule, how you can put up proper boundaries. There's that piece. And then how do you deal with the fact that people around you are changing? There may be some health surprises and people around you, and mortality is kind of on your mind. And maybe immortality. But you're definitely thinking about life and death on some scale, in some form or fashion. The good news is we are so close in October, and in November you actually get your patron planet and everybody's favorite planet, Jupiter, in your sign. So that gives you a nice kind of 12-month run, slightly over 12 months of Jupiter in your sign, which is very exciting. Everybody loves this transit. Good things tend to happen. Sometimes people, I don't think so much of Sagittarius, but there are signs where, or people you just know, where, I don't know, if, like, think of a person you know who does this. Like, they they win some money, like a small amount of money in the lottery. Like, maybe they win, I mean, it's relatively small compared to like $1 million or several $1,000,000. And maybe they win $5,000 in something in the lottery. And then maybe they're having a child, or something good happens to one of their children, and maybe they're buying a new house. And so what I'm getting at here is, when you observe them from a distance, just people in your lives, things seem to be going pretty well for them. Like lucky stuff, or things that other people don't have the ability to do or have. These people might have, but then when you sit down and have coffee with them, or dinner with them, or get on the phone with them, they may sound like kind of Debbie Downer, and you'll say, wow, you won the lottery. That is so cool. I've never met anybody who won the lottery. And they say, yeah, but it was only $5,000. I mean, by the time they take taxes out, it's hardly anything. I've already spent it on paying off my credit cards. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like the people where they just turn everything into, like, they minimize it and they turn it into an actual negative. Like, how do you turn winning the lottery into a negative? It takes a lot of work. But there are people who will do this, and they won't recognize the good things happening to them. And often in astrology, you know, I'll get these comments, or people contacting me like, Jupiter's just, you keep saying Jupiter's going to do good things for me. Jupiter's not doing anything good for me. But then once we get talking, if I start engaging with them a little bit, they're like, well, I mean, I have to be careful, because I don't want, you know, people tell me their personal stories, so I don't want to give examples in case I give, because I don't want to do that to people. But they'll start telling me a series of things where I'm like, you know, a lot of people give their right arm for whatever you just told me happened to you, you know, and they just don't see it. And there's always a yeah, but at the end of the positive thing that just happened. Yeah, but it's really like, the reason that's not good is this. And then this other thing, like, you know, I got this other job offer, and I'm like, congratulations. And they're like, yeah, but so I don't mean to rag too much on that mentality, but I want to underline it. So it's good, like, it's good for me and you and all of us to recognize when we start to do that. Listen to yourself. I have to practice it just as much as you do, to listen to myself and make sure I'm not doing that. Because sometimes, as much as I work on my thoughts and the way I think and recognizing the good in my world, I can catch myself sometimes doing this twist where it's like, yeah, but, and it's just this thing that people, you know, do, this thing that people do to themselves, and what the result is, they don't recognize the good. So Jupiter, a lot of you, Jupiter is going to come into your sign, and you're going to be just bowled over by how awesome it is. And you're going to be like, this is the best year ever. And you'll see, while not everything's perfect, of course, Jupiter's not going to make everything in your life perfect. It's not going to be like a Disney movie at the end of the Disney movie, and it's not happily ever after, but really life-changing, positive stuff can happen. Now, Jupiter can also expand stuff. It can, sometimes when it goes through our own sign, it can expand a waistline. We can gain pounds. That's really happened to me. So that's part's unfortunately very true, even though I was like resisting it. But that absolutely can happen. But you know, traditionally, it was actually good. Like, it was in many cultures around the world, it would still be so lucky in their eyes to gain weight. Ultimately, and this shows how, you know, in a Western culture, or in a culture where we have so much abundance, that, you know, gaining weight is seen as bad. But in most parts of the world, it would be such a gift to be able to gain weight and to have a lifestyle where that could happen. That was actually a reality, or possibility. So Jupiter's what can be seen as sort of a downside is still lucky. It would still be lucky if you were living in the wild to find enough food that you didn't get emaciated and die. So because there is, even in that Jupiter story of like gaining weight, one could turn it around and be like, oh, that's such a bummer that Jupiter, we could turn it into a negative. And I actually did gain weight during the Jupiter transit, and but it was an awesome year. It was an awesome year. So, and it's, how beautiful is it that I have enough food and abundance in my life that I could gain weight. I mean, I am so privileged, actually, to be able to say that I had enough food and clean water. So I'm trying, you may not want to hear about food and clean water, but I just want to coach you around how we twist things. There's another thing that Jupiter can do that can seem bad, and it can seem quite bad. I've also had this thing happen to me. So as much as Jupiter has helped me in so many areas of my life, there are times, like when it was going through my 7th, 8th, 9th houses, when it did what it does to a lot of people. It will, if your relationships are not on solid ground and something is already happening there, like brewing, it can make it bigger and bigger and bigger until you've got a big mess you've got to figure out how to fix. And it can do that in certain areas of your chart where it just brews and brews and can create something you've got to deal with. Now, at the time that that's happening, we can say, oh, this is terrible. And it can feel like, if it's a relationship that's strained or breaking up, that it is legitimately painful and seems horrible while you're going through it. With the expanse of time, sometimes we can look back on a time when something seemingly really bad was happening, and at the time it legitimately felt bad, and anybody rational would agree, and it's not a great thing. But then time moves on, and you recognize that you wouldn't be where you are today had that bad thing not occurred. And so there's some gifts from Jupiter that are a little like that, because it's not, unless you're a rising Gemini. Sorry, I'm just moving the chart around to make sure I'm right. It's not going to impact your relationship so much. It's really more personal to you. Like, this is your chance to have a little help changing your life for the better. And this will come about in a number of ways. I would say for a number of people, if you're in the working world, job changes are coming up for you that will bring in more money. It may not be immediate, but that's sort of the pathway a lot of this takes for people. But just lucky breaks will occur, and you'll begin to feel that as soon as, for some of you, November. But be on the lookout for the good happening in your life. Try to catch good things happening rather than bad things. Because you kind of see in the world what you're looking for. So if you're looking to shoot holes in something, or you're looking to establish a pattern of life's never good to me, you will be able to find stuff to support that. Against all credulity, with everyone else, because, it's just the way you see something. But if, you do the reverse and you just look for all the good in your life, you'll be amazed at what happens during this year. It is a time in general, which we've talked about, where you're just got huge transformation going on in your relationship world and your financial world. So there is a big career emphasis here. You're meant to be building something for the long term. And it's hard. It's slow, drawn out change. But you are having to work at it and put effort in. Some of you may be moving soon. If you haven't moved already, you may be moving soon. The North Node is moving from the 9th house to the 8th house. So instead of working on, it depends on what's been going on in your life. Like some of you have been working on a lot of legal matters, issues to do with moving a distance, or legal matters, or maybe you've had to work really hard on how you market yourself or present yourself. Maybe some of you have been hard at work on a book or publishing. There's been some issues of a distance, like it may not be you who's commuting a distance, but maybe it's in a relationship, so it could be a child, friend, like maybe you had to move away from your friends, or friends moved away from you, or a spouse is commuting and traveling a lot, you don't see them as much. There's stuff with long distance. It's been an actual issue for you, like sometimes bringing up problems. So there's that, but not insurmountable problems. It just means you've had to evolve in a way where you've had to cope and figure out how to deal with the situation. Now, the North Node is going to be moving into your 8th house, so the emphasis will be on tending to a variety of things, but the two easiest to kind of pick out in your life would be, you've got to deal with your finances. And maybe if you've had legal stuff going on, you're like, I have been dealing with my finances. But with the North Node going through the 8th house, it's like you nurture what's there, or you grow it, because you have Cancer in your 8th house. So you treat your money and your financial world like it's your baby. It's the thing you're going to take care of and nurture and grow. So start looking at your finances that way. Just nurture what you have, some love for it. So if you only have a little bit of money, or maybe even debt, you nurture the debt, meaning not that you grow it, but you reduce it. You nurture and you pay attention to it and you reduce it. But if maybe you're starting a little retirement account, or you're starting to learn how to save, you just start small, like a baby, like even a sperm and an egg. You start small, you just start with the basics, and then you grow. You treat your financial world, everything within it, like, I need to just nurture this. And it will come somewhat naturally to you. And then the other thing you have to nurture is your sex life and your ability to grow closer to someone, and to rid yourself of barriers that get in the way of intimacy. So intimacy happens in all your relationships, or the potential is there. And then there are usually some barriers. Usually as we grow up, there are some barriers there to getting close to friends, or getting close to children, or parents, or spouses, or lovers. There's just sometimes there's some barriers there. So it's your job now to learn how to remove some of those barriers and grow closer to people, and trust that people aren't going to kill you. Because even in situations where we know no one's going to kill us, we have this fear, and we respond to life in terms of opening up and trusting people as though they're going to kill us, even though they're not really. Most people are not out to kill you. But we can respond to certain triggers as though somebody's actually got it in for us, and get really scared and then close off. And then it takes, and that's what Cancer, the crab, does. It like shuts its shell, closes off pinches, and attacks. It's once a Cancer gets in defense mode and attack mode, it's really hard to get them to open up again. So in the world of intimacy with anybody, being vulnerable and really growing in a relationship, that's where you've got some work to do. And life's going to give you lots of opportunity for that. So it's going to point out situations that trigger you highly, where you've got to learn to be different if you want to grow. Or maybe a new relationship will come in, but you'll have opportunity to practice somehow. So let me just take a look at how we move through. We talked a lot about October and November. Let's look at December. So by December, that opposition has gone away between Uranus And Venus has moved on forward and has gotten out of that zone. But it will be in your 12th house, so it's a bit like you've had been hosting Jupiter in your 12th house over the last year. It's like a tinier version of Jupiter. So it's still a nice support system for you. It's as though that when you get really rattled, there's just some kind of safety net there, this invisible safety net that was brought in by Jupiter that kept you from falling too far emotionally. And Venus is kind of doing the same. You may have a secret crush. That could be true as well. And Jupiter's firmly in your sign by December. So December should be fun. There's something going on around you now that feels really good. And we were talking a lot about career. The sun will be in your second house of, and so some of you may be getting a new job, getting positive attention, hopefully. There is a potential, but see, there's so many things mitigating or balancing. So I would think the attention is positive. But for some people, there's, negative attention because of what they've been doing. Some people, that Jupiter emphasis on them, if something really bad, they've been behaving really badly, it can backfire on them. That's when Jupiter can kind of make things blow up. But that's there to help you ultimately. I don't think most of you this applies, but it would be there to help you see how you could change your behaviors, see how you could change things, because sometimes things need to get bigger so you see them. But I think for most of you, I think Jupiter in your sign, Venus in the 12th house, which will be going into your first house, I think those factors kind of, again, they like hold you up. So I think it's more likely that you have some positive movement in your career, a positive notice, people noticing you in a positive way, and maybe some of you getting jobs or getting promotions. Maybe, I do think more money's on its way. It may not be showing up in December, but I do think more money is there. Some people may see more money. It just depends on how your chart is configured. So I think you're starting to feel really good in December. Given that we still have Uranus there on the edge of your 6th house, creating those tremors of maybe some anxiousness, nervousness, fear of health issues with yourself or others, maybe some stress and anxiety and fear around how much you're juggling in your schedule, a little bit of overwhelm in that area. So that's still going on, but at the same time, there's a lot of good stuff happening. This is a once in a 12-year cycle that people look forward to. So try to enjoy all of that. All right, take care, guys.